Wait a minute, hasn't this joke been done already? And doesn't it only come at the end of the video? And Ted's usually good for calling me on these things. Where is Ted anyway? Let's see what Ted is up to.
Perdo elvem, tecium vivere.
I'm sure he's going to eat that chicken when he's done with it. This is Conan the Adventurer. We all know of Conan the barbarian warrior out to avenge his family, played to campy perfection by Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, my first encounter with Conan was not the Arnold movies. It was, in fact, Conan the Librarian.
Never before in the history of motion pictures has there been a screen presence so commanding, so powerful, so deadly. He's Conan the Librarian.
No, not that one, but you're not far off. The one I'm referring to was actually an animation by the Reading Rainbow TV show. You know, the kids' book show that was hosted by LeVar Burton of Star Trek fame? Anyway, I couldn't find the clip, but it involved Conan showing a kid the library, and then giving him a parchment library card signed with a quill in glowing ink. I thought this was awesome, and for years afterwards I would, from time to time, say to the DM, "Did you know Conan was a librarian?" Much to his annoyance, I'm sure. My proper meeting with Conan was the series Conan the Adventurer. No, not the poorly made poor man's Hercules and Xena, but this.
I will find you, Rathaman! I shall destroy you first!
The story takes place on the continent of Hyboria, a land of plains, forests, mountains, snow-capped mountains, badlands, deserts, and jungles. The land was once ruled by the demon god Set and his serpent men. But he was banished by the good wizards of the world. This allowed Atlantis to rise to its greatest heights before its fall. Besides the ruins of Atlantis and its descendants, there are a plethora of other nations, ranging from mountain-dwelling barbarians to African-like kingdoms and Romanesque societies, all seemingly within reasonable riding distance of each other. More on that later. The story pertains to Conan and company going around and... just let the credits tell you.
Conan, the mightiest warrior ever! His quest to undo the spell of living stone cast upon his family by driving the evil serpent men back into another dimension and vanquishing their leader, the cruel wizard Rathaman.
Like Transformers and other cartoons from the 80s and 90s, it falls into the over-expositing opening trap. But they managed to make it work. The opening is wonderfully metal, especially for a kids' show. You have piles of skulls, pillars of flames, and an epic sword fight with a mighty warrior. You can't get much more metal than that. Also, your mileage may vary, but the song is considered by many to be some crowning music of awesome. And when I could barely remember this show after not watching it for 14-odd years, it was the song I remembered most clearly. Anyway, back to the story. The series begins with a younger Conan and his grandfather Khan. They are enjoying story time when Conan hears some wild horses and mistakes them for knights riding by, which leads him to make this ultimately four-knot declaration.
One day, it won't be just a pack of horses. One day it will be an army of knights, and I will lead them into battle!
Just then, a meteor shower pelts the land with star metal, which Conan and Khan discover and later gather up. Without protection, mind you, so between the radiation poisoning and the sterility, it's a good thing Khan has already had his kids. Meanwhile, the villain Rathaman watches all this with some calm detachment.
Rathaman! 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 The sky is falling! We're doomed! We're doomed!
Don't be a fool, Dregs. Only a few stars are falling.
He then gets a summons from his master Set, who tells him what his overarching goal now is.
You must build me 7 great pyramids, with a disk of star metal atop each one. Only then can you forever release me from the abyss.
So Conan's father makes various weapons and tools out of the star metal, crafting one masterwork sword to give to his son, but not for free. He places the sword under a rock, stating that when Conan is strong and man enough to lift the rock, he can have the sword.
And that's good parenting right there. No joke, I support that.
Time passes and Rathamon discovers that Conan's father worked the star metal and visits the village. Conan runs off to get his sword while Rathamon questions Conan's family. Not liking the answers, he turns the lot of them to stone. Conan comes back in time to see this, and with his magic star metal sword, he and Rathamon fight each other off, making their angry declarations of death and vengeance. After that, Conan swears to find a way to restore his family and rides off to go find it. As he begins his search, Conan meets the ghost of the sage Epimetheus of Atlantis, who gives him some backstory and tells him that destroying Rathamon's black ring will restore his family. Epimetheus gives Conan a sturdy shield and a baby phoenix to aid him and sets him off on his quest, starting with a cliffhanger where he gets caught by slavers. After that, he finds various companions, and each episode has a self-contained plot. But plot elements, lessons, and learned skills do carry over from episode to episode. For instance, Conan starts out as strong, but not very nimble, and not the most wise. Being called a big dumb ox is not an accurate description. But as the series progresses, he becomes more nimble and more tempered. The characters in the show follow the 5-man band model. You have Conan the brash and slightly reckless but valorous and honorable hero, with Prince Zula of the Wasai as the wise and tempered lancer, Jesmine the chick and action girl, Grey Wolf the wind wizard and smart guy of the group, and Snag, the big guy. Each has their own personality, unique skills, plot points, and arcs that make them more than their base archetypes.
And they look dang fine in tiger stripes and pink corsets.
Now, before anyone mentions him, I know about the 6th member of the group, Falconer. He's the 6th Ranger, you could say, who shows up later in the show and isn't in the credits. I do like him, but I find him hard to quantify. Each of the first 5 have a core virtue that helps define their character. Conan is courage, Jesmine is loyalty, Zula is wisdom, Grey Wolf knowledge, and Snag is friendship. Yes, friendship, because he and Conan are bros. Though in this case it's less distracting the chick's less attractive friend, and more going into a giant-filled death trap, but hey, what are bros for? There's no virtue that helps to separate him from the others, and so I find him hard to see as more than just a foil for Windfang, Rathamon's flying minion. Also, he's the only one of the heroes not to get a romantic interest. Not cool, man. Not cool. Another detail of note is that the whole group isn't always together. Each of them has responsibilities to their tribe, nation, or whatnot. Zula is a prince. He has princely things to attend to. Grey Wolf has wizarding things to keep up on in his home city of Xanthus, etc. Sometimes Conan is riding on his own, doing questing stuff. These people have lives outside the plot. It's a touch of realism that makes them seem like real people, which I like. A supporting character of particular note is Khan, Conan's grandfather. He is a cunning old warrior with a lot of gall, who is at least 2 kinds of awesome. And hey,
I admire gall.
How much awesome gall does he have? Well, to save his family from a powerful enchantress, he'll throw a lich at her. Enough said. The villains of Conan are an interesting mix. You have Rathamon, wizard and servant of Set, Ramamon, Rathamon's predecessor and creator, and then you have Mesmira, enchantress and queen of the nation of Stygia. Ramamon is your more traditional villain. He wants to rule, and he wants power, and he's willing to lick boot, or tail in this instance, to get it. Mesmira, on the other hand, is more a villain of vice. She's vain and lustful.
When I get my hands on you, Mesmira, you'll wish you never heard of the Purple Lotus.
Someday you will get your hands on me, Conan, but on my terms, not yours.
Yeah, more on that later. Also, another motivating factor is that she is the legitimate queen of Stygia, and she wants Rathamon and his Serpent men, who are essentially squatters, out. She also has a more tender side, but unfortunately that side is never really explored. Then there's Rathamon. I like Rathamon. Yes, he does the usual enslave, curse, and conquer bit, but unlike the tail-licker Ramamon, he is genuinely loyal to Set. His primary motivation is freeing and serving his master, and he is actually kind of earnest about it, and that makes him interesting and an enjoyable villain to me. In addition to those above, you have the lieutenants of Rathamon, Skulker and Windfang. They're enjoyable because they are the mere opposites of each other. One loathes his lot and yearns to be free, while the other loves what he is, and when he loses it, does everything to get it back. And as for the one who bemoans his fate, his story is deliciously tragic. On the technical side of things, the animation is above average for the late 80s, early 90s, and though it hasn't aged particularly well, it has aged better than some cartoons from the time, and is still watchable in my opinion.
That is, of course, unless you're an animation snob like some people.
There are off-model moments, the most consistent being Jasmine's shifting number of shuriken.
And if you're marathoning the episodes, you can turn the shifting shurikens into a drinking game.
The audio. The music accents but doesn't stand out, except for the opening song, of course. The voice acting. Well, who comes to an American cartoon for the voice acting? But it is sound. It can get a bit hammy at times.
Taste the spice of wickedness!
But it adds to the charm. And come on, it's Conan.
Remember how I said I would get to certain things later? Well, it's later!
The source material for this show, Conan the Barbarian, was written by Robert E. Howard, who is considered to be the father of the swords and sorcery subgenre of fantasy, much like how J.R.R. Tolkien is considered the father of high fantasy. There are two key things to keep in mind about Howard's world. First, he did create Hyboria with the dissimilar nations and cultures near or next to each other, though in the real world they wouldn't have naturally developed in such close proximity. So if it seems like in the show you have such radically different cultures as neighbors, within reasonable riding distance of each other, it's supposed to be that way. Second, there are detractors from the show who say it defanged Howard's work. The stories for the episodes draw from the Conan stories, but one has to remember that Howard believed barbarism was the pure state of humanity, and city and civilization was inherently corrupt. So the world of Conan is a very brutal place, and this was a kids' show. Not everything was going to carry over. However, yes, some things were debrutalized. They say destroy instead of kill, and they send the serpent men to the abyss instead of killing them. But that doesn't mean they sugar-coated things either. For instance, it shows cannibals, a woman washed away in a wave of lava, and, well, just watch this clip.
Wait, what have we here? Never have I seen such a pretty wench.
Why, you...
Come, girl!
Because, you know, this show's for kids.
Conan had 64 episodes and did deal with the set arc, although there are many strands left open because, hey, they were planning on continuing. But it got cancelled. Conan the Adventurer is an entertaining show. While not perfect, it does succeed where it counts and treats kids like they can handle more than what most standards think that they can. It also serves as a good way to introduce the young folks into the world of Conan to help foster interest in the full works of Howard later on. I recommend giving it a watch, be it DVD if you're a Conan fan in general, or the Hub or suitable streaming sites. Anyway, that's all for now, my lovelies. Fare you well.